Is the NFL trying to sabotage the Seattle Seahawks? What's up, everyone? I'm Filoki, and today I wanted to take a quick look at a topic that I thought was relatively interesting after I saw the amount of miles that the Seattle Seahawks would travel in the 2020 NFL season. Before that, though, I just wanted to thank everyone for all the support. I know I say it almost every single video, but the support just gets crazier and crazier. In the last 2 days after I posted my video, I got 55 new subscribers in 2 days. That's insane. That's a ton. And I can't thank you enough. Thank you, everyone, for all the support. But to get into the video, the Seattle Seahawks will be traveling 28,982 miles in the 2020 NFL season if every team continues to play where they're supposed to play. And the second most traveled team, the LA Chargers, will be traveling 22,228. That's a pretty big difference between 1 and 2. That is 6,000, over 6,000. And the lowest traveling team in the NFL will be the Baltimore Ravens with only 6,420 miles traveled. That's less total miles than the difference between number 1 and number 2. So that's a pretty crazy statistic to look at. When you think about it, though, it does make sense for the NFL to make the Baltimore Ravens the lowest traveling team because they were the most energetic, they were most entertaining, they were the most beloved team of the NFL season last year. Lamar Jackson, the reigning MVP, will be going into the 2020 season, and the NFL, I guess, wanted to take it easy on him, and they probably wanted them to find success because there is a lot of name value on that team and a lot of success from last year, other than the playoffs. In this video, I wanted to look at the last 4 years of the NFL from 2015 to 2019. What team traveled the most and how well did they do in their season? In 2015, the team that traveled the most in that season was the San Francisco 49ers at almost 28,000 miles. The Dolphins were number 2 with around 26,500 miles as well. And if we take a look at the standings in that season, the 49ers went 5-11 and the Dolphins went 6-10, so 2 below average, well below average teams. In the 2015 season as well, the Seahawks traveled 25,000 miles, and they ended up going 10-6 in that season, making the playoffs, and this was a year after they ended up winning the Super Bowl in 2014. And looking at 2016, the team that traveled the most miles was the St. Louis Rams at that time, 37,000 miles. The Raiders were number 2 with 31,500, and the Seahawks were number 3 with 27,700 miles. And taking a look at the standings of that year, the Rams ended up going 4-12, a very bad season. However, the Raiders traveling 31,000 miles ended up going 12-4, and the Seahawks traveling 27,000 ended up going 10-5-1, both of which made the playoffs. However, most traveled team, Rams, 4-12, not a good season. And taking a look at 2017, the team who traveled the most was the Raiders, with number 2 being the Cardinals. This begins the 3-year period where the Raiders traveled the most miles. And if we take a look at the standings of the 2017 NFL season, the Oakland Raiders went 6-10 and the Arizona Cardinals went 8-8, so 2 pretty average to lackluster seasons for the top 2 travel teams in the NFL that year. And also in 2017, after yet again traveling over 25,000 miles, the Seahawks ended up going 9-7 and made the playoffs as a wild card. And taking a look at the 2018 NFL season, the Raiders were once again the most traveled team, traveling 31,700 miles, and the Seahawks were number 2, traveling around 29,000. And in that season, the Oakland Raiders ended up going 4-12, the most traveled team, one of the worst teams in the league. The Seahawks did, however, end up going 10-6 and making the playoffs, so it seems like the Seahawks are just used to traveling long distances every year. And finally, taking a look at 2019, once again, the Raiders are the most traveled team at 35,000 miles, and the Rams are number 2 at 33,000. The Chargers were number 3 at 28,000, and the Seahawks number 4 at 27,500. And taking a look at the standings of 2019, the Raiders, the number 1 traveling team, went 7-9. The Rams at number 2 went 9-7, and the Chargers at number 3 ended up going 5-11. And in 2019, the Seahawks ended up going 11-5 after once again traveling over 25,000 miles. So with all that out of the way, it kind of just seems that some teams are better at traveling a lot than other teams. In the last 3 years, with the Raiders traveling the most miles each of those years, they didn't make the playoffs once. However, every single year that we looked at, the Seahawks traveled over 25,000 miles, and they ended up making the playoffs every single one of those years. So it really is just a matter of teams being better at traveling than others. Generally, the teams who had done well the previous season were in the top 5 lowest traveled, such as the Patriots in 2019, the Steelers in 2016 and 17, and the Panthers in 2018. So really the main thing that I would take away from this is that West Coast teams almost always are higher traveling than East Coast teams. And when it comes down to the Seahawks, do I think the NFL is trying to sabotage the Seahawks? Not really. I think the Seahawks kind of deal with this every single year and they've been able to do fine. But it would be nice to see how the Seahawks would be able to do in a season where they didn't actually travel 25,000 miles or more. I'm not sure if this is something deliberately done by the NFL, but it seems like the teams that are generally around the lowest traveling teams are teams that are having a lot of popularity going into the season. Like in 2016 and 2017, the Steelers were a very entertaining team. They had Le'Veon Bell, they had Antonio Brown, they had Ben Roethlisberger, and even if you didn't like the Pittsburgh Steelers, you just had to watch them because their offense was so entertaining. And going into the 2020 season, you can see that the Ravens, one of the most electrifying, one of the most entertaining offenses in the NFL, is going to be traveling the least amount out of every single team, which will definitely be an advantage in my opinion, but it really matters when they get into the playoffs because I think that teams will be able to figure them out if they can deliberately game plan for them, kind of how the Titans ended up doing last season in the playoffs. But I think that the Ravens will still be one of the most entertaining offenses to watch this year, and I think the NFL knew that as well, and I believe the NFL gave them deliberately the least amount of miles traveled to try to help them succeed. Surprisingly enough, the Buccaneers aren't actually in the least traveled list, at least not in the top 5 least traveled, but I would have expected that the NFL would have helped Tom Brady. Like, they really gave him a very easy schedule going into the latter half of the season, giving him domed arenas and very nice weather areas going into the winter. But surprisingly enough, the Buccaneers were not on the top 5 least traveling teams in 2020. But when it comes to the Seahawks, I believe if the Seahawks had a season where they traveled less than 10,000 miles, they would do insanely well, because traveling definitely takes a toll on your body and your mental state, and it definitely gives a big home field advantage to the home team, because traveling so many miles and then having to get ready for a brutal game in the next few days definitely seems like it would be an issue for almost anyone. Obviously, these are professional athletes that are getting paid to be able to do that and play at a high level, but you'd have to think that this takes a toll on anyone, and I believe that the home field advantage when it comes to traveling a long distance for the away team is definitely a big advantage, and the Ravens will definitely feel that next season. Do I believe that the Seahawks will do worse because of how many miles they travel? I don't believe so. I think the Seahawks have basically gotten used to it. They kind of deal with this every single season, which is pretty disappointing. And like I said, I'd like to see a season where the Seahawks traveled less than 10,000 miles. I believe the Seahawks would do very well and they'd be a legit title contender almost instantly. As soon as you see the schedule and see them traveling less than 10,000 miles, you would kind of think that, man, these Seahawks are going to do very well because they've been so used to traveling 25,000 or more miles every single year, but now they've been gifted by the NFL to not have to travel and not destroy their bodies. I think it would be very interesting to see that happen, but I don't believe it'll happen because as a West Coast team, I think the Seahawks are definitely going to be one of the highest traveling teams every single year. But with that, that's going to be the end of the video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think that the NFL is trying to sabotage the Seattle Seahawks? Do you think that the NFL deliberately chooses who travels the least and who travels the most every single year to try to have better and worse teams based on the popularity ratings? Also, leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new. We've been growing insanely fast and I can't thank everyone enough. So if you are new and you've been watching these videos and you've been enjoying them, make sure you subscribe. It'd be very cool. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching. Have a great day.